This conference will now be recorded.
Okay. So today we'll be discussing about case management. Okay. So far we have developed an application, right? So we have added a couple of screens, we have added validations and all the stuff, right? So in order to run a transaction, or in order to create a transaction for our application, so we used to run the flow. So we have created a flow. In the flow, we have added a couple of assignments. So on the assignment outgoing connector, so we used to add the flow action section and all the stuff. So whatever the logic that we try to write for an application, right, or for a transaction, so we used to embed those application log, the transaction logics into the flow, right? So the skeleton of your application is nothing but I'm sorry. So the skeleton of your application is a flow rule. See, whatever the application logic that you write, either through activities or data transforms or whatever it is. So we used to embed these logics into the flow. So ultimately, flow is the base rule for your application, right? So now we have got a couple of disadvantages with the flow processing. Okay. So say for example, there are two flows, a parent flow and a child flow. Now if I wanted to have dependency between parent flow and child flow, so we cannot do with flow processing directly. Out of the box, we cannot do that. Okay. So say for example, the child wants to wait till the parent is completed. Assume that the child flow wanted to wait till the parent flow is completed. Can we achieve this by using flow processing? No, we cannot achieve this. Okay, so to have dependencies between a parent and a child, basically a parent transaction and a child transaction. So there is no way to create in the flow processing directly out of the box. Now PRPC has introduced case management. So here the case will act like a base for your application. Earlier we used to run the flow. Now we'll run the case. We'll create the case, we'll add our all application logics into the case, and we'll run the case to create the work objects or transactions. So we create a case type here. So basically we can create a parent case, child case. So we can have dependencies, we can create multiple childs for a single parent, and all those stuff we can be managed by using case management principles. Okay, so from Pega 7 onwards, so PRPC Pega has introduced something called as case designer. Case designer. So this is introduced in Pega 7 version. If you wanted to design your case, so you have to use a framework called as case designer. Basically, case designer is a landing page where you can configure your case type. See, if you wanted to create a flow, what you have to do? You have to go to class, you have to do a right click. Okay, go to the process category, create the flow, click on the flow rule will be created. So then you have to design your flow, right? So similarly, if you wanted to create a case type, so Pega has introduced something called as case designer. So case designer is a framework which is written to configure a case type in a simple way. Why case designer was introduced is because, so if you wanted to design your case type in a simple way, okay, without opening the rule forms itself, you can create the case type, you can add your application logics to the case type, and all the stuff you can do via case designer. So if you wanted to access the cases, if you wanted to access your cases in your application, so here there is something called as case types explorer. So click on this case types explorer. So once you click on this case types explorer, it will display the list of case types which are there in your application. So as we don't have any case types, so it is empty. If you want, we can create a case type. If you wanted to access classes, what you used to do, you have to go to app explorer. If you wanted to access data types, so you used to click on data types explorer. Similarly, if you wanted to create or if you wanted to manage all the cases, so we have to click on the case types. Okay, so now what we'll do is we'll take an example. So we'll work on that example by using case type, right? So I'll take example leave application as an example. So I'll create a leave application case type and I will try to extend this leave application, or basically I'll try to add some logics to this particular leave application case type. Okay, so now how to create a case type? See here, there is something called as add a case type link. So click on this. So now it will ask you to give the name or the label of the case type. So basically in our context it is name. So leave application is my case type name. So there is something called as advanced settings. So we'll discuss this later point of time, this portion. See here it says derives from directed, derives from pattern. So basically it is asking for classes. What is my directed parent and what is my pattern parent? So in which rules I have to create, what is the version? So all these things it is asking us. So we'll come back to this later point of time. So now I'm creating a case type called as leave application case type. So click on submit. So once you click on submit, so in the background, so it starts creating the necessary infrastructure or necessary rules behind the screens for us to create a case type. So case type has a number of rules. Basically, it is creating all other rules in the background. So this wizard is called as case type express wizard. So it is loading. Now we have created a case type. So leave application is a case type, right? So in this case type, the one which you are seeing, right, this portion, the right side portion, this is called as case designer. Case designer is basically, it is a framework written to configure your case type. Leave application is case type and this is case designer. From this case designer, you can build your case type. So overall, this case designer has 5 tabs. Here, data model tab, workflow tab, views tab, settings tab, and test cases. Okay, so data model is nothing but it is the list of properties that we create as a part of this particular case type. So what are all the properties that we wanted to create for leave application? So you have to write it in this, you have to create it in the data model. Okay, so basically I'll create 3 properties: leave start date, leave end date. So basically, all right, so this is a date only field. So I'll delete this and I will add one more. Leave start date. The type is date only. Okay, so I've created 2 properties. So basically, see here, these 2 are nothing but these are the properties which are specific to leave application. Now click on this ID. What is this? This is nothing but basically a property rule. This is a property rule. The name is or the ID is leave end date is property. So earlier from App Explorer, if you wanted to create a property, what is the way? So you have to do a right click, go to the data model tab, go to property, click on the property, okay, configure the type, okay, control and all those stuff. Then you have to click on save, right? So in that way, we used to create the properties. Now come back to leave case type. So directly, without opening the rule form itself, we have created these properties. So earlier we used to call as properties. Now we are calling this as fields. The same thing, but the terminology difference. as we are more specifically speaking in terms of the end user, right? So property is a bit technical. So fields is something which is very specific to the end user point of view. Okay, we have created two properties. So let's have workflow. What is a workflow? Okay, so we'll come back to workflow. We'll see first views, settings, then we'll come back to workflow. So what is a view? View is nothing but screens. We have customer detail screen, okay, vehicle detail screen, manager approval screen, address detail screen, right? So the screens, whatever the screens that we display to the user, so those are called as views. Views are nothing but these are the sections. Okay, so now do you understand the terminology difference between a case type and the flow processing? So there is a big terminology difference. We are referring to the same thing, but in a different way. View is more specific in terms of customer point of view, right? Section means it is something technical. View is something which is more specific to end users. So for that reason, so in the case designer, they have given the name as views. So views are nothing but the list of screens that we design for this particular case type. That is leave application case type. Now come back to settings. Settings, there are different types of settings. If, for example, if you take locking, so what type of locking that we wanted to use? So I've told you there are two types of lockings, right? One is the default locking and other one is optimistic locking. So how you wanted to manage your locking, either default or optimistic, you can choose, right? You can come to settings and you can choose. Say for example, if you wanted to set SLA, service level agreement, that is nothing but we call it as goal and deadline. Okay, so if you wanted to have SLA for a case type, so you can come here and you can configure the SLA, basically the goals and deadlines. Coming to general. See, initial urgency. What is my initial urgency? If you wanted to keep your initial urgency of your case, so it is 10. So if you wanted to increase, you can increase. Okay. So skip create view harness. So I'll come back to all these other options. So what I'm saying is there are different types of settings that you can perform it on the case type. So these settings are at case type level, at a case level, that is leave application level. Right. Now test cases. So test cases is something if you wanted to automate. Generally, if you write a logic, so what test engineers will do, so they'll test it, right? So if you wanted to have an automation for that particular logic, so basically you can write the test cases. Okay, so test cases are specifically written in order for automation purpose. Okay, so let's ignore this test case, come back to the workflow, so which is very important. So basically what is workflow? What is the flow here?
Applying for a leave is a flow here.
Only applying for a leave is a flow. Applying for a leave, approving the leave. Okay, so once leave is approved, it has to be approved by HR. So all these things, right? Once this is approved by HR, so your leaves will be deducted from your account, your leave accounts. So all these things, right? All these things comes as a part of the flow, workflow. So how your work is flowing in your leave application case. Okay, so for example, you wanted to travel from India, assume that Hyderabad, from Hyderabad to US, New York City, assume that. So if you wanted to travel from Hyderabad, first of all, from here, you have to take a flight, Hyderabad. So you will reach intermediate points, right? Like, so from Hyderabad to Dubai is one milestone. From Dubai to different cities, another milestone. From that city to New York City. Okay, so you have different milestones in your entire workflow. In your flow, you have different milestones here. Okay, so this entire flow is considered as your workflow, right? Specific to traveling to US to take that. So these are the milestone points till you reach the destination, right? Similarly, in your leave application case type also, in fact, if you create any case type, so first of all, you have to find your flow. What is the path that I'm taking in order to complete my flow, right? So first you will start the case, so how you wanted to reach to a different stages and ultimately to the end. Okay, so this is called your workflow. Now if you wanted to do this, so PRPC is having something called as stages. So if you read this point, stages, see this, stages are powerful ways to split the overall life cycle of the case into milestones and manageable sections. Basically you create any case type, so it will be having some life cycle of its own, right? So this entire life cycle you have to split into different stages. Stages are nothing but the milestones. Okay, now for leave application, can you tell me what are, for this leave application life cycle, for this entire life cycle, so what can be the milestone points?
Applying the leave, then getting
Apply
it
for
approved
leave,
from the manager.
manager approval,
Finance approval.
HR processing, finance processing. Okay, so all these things are different milestones in your leave application case type. Okay, so now how did we, how did we do this? See, for leave application we can, based on something we have done this, right? So in general, how to split the overall life cycle into stages? So PRPC has given some best practices, something, it has given something, so you can follow those. So the first one is change in the ownership. Second one is change in the status, based on the ownership or based on the routing. Basically, you know routing, what is routing? So the work is being transferred from one operator to other operator, right? So whenever there is a change in the ownership, based on this you can split the entire overall life cycle into stages based on status also. So for example, from new status to in progress to working status to completed status. So you can split your overall life cycle into different stages based on the change in the ownership and the status. So these are a couple of best practices that you can follow during your split. And it's not that you should follow this. So if you follow, you will get a good idea on this. If you have any better approach, then you can follow that. Okay. So here we have done mostly based on the ownership, right? Applying a leave will be done by an associate. Once it is done, so manager. So the change of ownership is being transferred from the associate to manager, right? So from manager to HR processing to finance processing. The change in the ownership. So based on that, we have split this. So in your workflow, the overall life cycle of your application, you have to divide them into stages. That is what it says. Stages are powerful way to split the overall life cycle of the case into milestones and manageable sections. So basically, why we are splitting into stages? Because we can manage them easily. For a stage, we can manage our logics in a simpler way. So for that reason, we have split them into stages. Next, process can be added to a stage in order to help guide the work and activity needed to progress to the next stage. So basically, as we have different stages, so whatever the work that we wanted to specify in that particular stage, we can do it by a process. So what type of process that we wanted to perform under a stage, So you have to define them. So basically, the overall life cycle, the case life cycle will have case types are divided into stages. Again, under stages are divided into process. The process again further divided into steps. Basically, in this way, you'll have this. So we'll see this anyways. So first of all, what we'll do is we'll go to the case. We have created the case type, right? Now we'll create the stages. So click on add life cycle. What is the first stage? Apply leaf, or simply leaf. Let's keep apply leaf. You can give any name. This is first stage. Click on next stage. Manager approval. Third one is HR processing. Next one is finance processing. So click on save. So in a life cycle, the best number of stages is from. So basically, what PRPC is suggesting is you should not extend your number of stages beyond 5 to 7. Beyond 5 to 7. 5 to 7 is the limit basically. So if you create more than that, more than 5 to 7 number of stages in a case type, so it will be tough to maintain your case type. Basically, the end user so will not show an interest because you have to traverse through multiple stages, right? So the best practice is to have somewhere around 5 to 7 stages in a case type. So in a case type, there are two types of stages. One is the primary stages, whatever the stages that we are seeing, right? Whatever stages that we have created are nothing but they are primary stages. There is something called as the alternate stage. See here bottom. So basically the stages are divided into two types, primary stages and an alternate stage. Now what's the difference? What's the difference between a primary stage and an alternate stage? Why this name is given as alternate stage?
If the happy path is not followed, then the alternate kicks in.
Yes. So in your transaction, so primary stages are nothing but they are the happy paths. They are the happy paths. So once you reach, so in your transaction, you end up somewhere in an unhappy path. So then you have to land it in an alternate stage. Example, you have applied for a leave, the manager has rejected it. If it is approved, it will go for HR processing. If it is rejected, then it will go for alternate stage. Let's take leave rejected. So once you have to make sure that once it is rejected, it has to come to this stage. Okay. So you will do some processing or you'll send some notification, something like that. Okay. So I've created one alternate stage. So basically the primary stages are nothing but they are the happy path and alternate stages are nothing but they are unhappy path. Okay. The first stage in a case type is called as starting stage. So the last stage is called as resolution stage. Resolution stage. Okay. So once you click on this particular stage, see here, this is first stage, right? Apply leave is the first stage. Its corresponding property panel will be displayed on the right side. Okay. So if you click on the second stage related property panel will be displayed on the right side. Basically, this is called as property panel. What is property panel? Where you can configure the properties of this particular stage. Similarly, if you wanted to, this is alternate stage, right? So I will assign a status called as resolved rejected. The status will be changed to resolved rejected once you reach a leave rejected stage. So click on save. So as soon as you start a case type, okay, once you run a case type, so the first stage in the case type will be executed. First stage in the case type. What is the first stage? First primary stage, basically. So it is apply leaf. Once you run the case type, so this case type will trigger this particular stage. That stage is apply leaf. Once this is completed, automatically it will go to the second stage. Once the second stage is completed, third stage is completed, fourth stage. If there is some unhappy path, unusual path happens in your transaction, then it should go to alternate stage. You have to write that logic in that way. Otherwise, it will traverse through. So basically, these stages are automated. Automated in the sense, once the first stage is completed, it will go to the second stage. Second stage is completed, third stage, till it reaches the resolution stage. The last stage in a case type is called as resolution stage. Let's mark this as resolve the case. So once it reaches here, it is resolve the case, and the status is resolved completed. Okay, so click on save. I mark this stage as resolved. So this stage, all resolution stages are specified with a red mark. Now, under stages, so you have to write some logic, right? In the apply leave stage, you have to create few screens. Okay, in that screen, you have to enter the start date, end date. Okay, once that is done, you have to give the reason. All those things you have to write. So where will you write that logic? So the logic should be written in the process. Okay, so again, stages are further divided into processes. So how to add a process? There are two ways. So see here, there is something called as plus process. Once you hover on this, it is asking us to add a step. If you click on the step, it will add a process, or hover on this. Once you hover on this, you will get menu options. So click on this, add process, click on new process. Once you click on new process, it will add a process under the stage one. So this is starting process in the stage. So once the case type is triggered, the first stage will be triggered. In the first stage, the first process will be triggered. What is the first process here? Apply leave. I'll change the leave. Enter leave details. Okay, enter leave details is the name of the process. In this process, we have a step. That step is apply leave. So I'll change this label also. Enter start and end dates. You can give any label, meaningful label. Okay, so basically the process is further divided into steps. It is within the steps you have to write your logic. Okay, so now under enter leave details process, there is a step called as enter start date and end date. In this step, I'll create a screen. How to create a screen? What are the steps to create a screen? No. In general, when you do a flow processing, so I've told you a couple of steps, right? So what are the steps? Yes, Manisha. Others, anyone?
You have to create the sections.
That's it.
Identify the properties to display, and what would be the validation of the properties, and then create a section, add the properties to the section.
So after creating the section and adding properties to the section, what you have to do?
You have to create the flow actions, flows.
Flow action, and after creating a flow action, you have to create a flow. In the flow, add an assignment shape on the assignment outgoing connector. So you have to add the flow action, and finally you have to run the flow. So this is the way, right? If you do it via flow processing, this is the way. Now we'll see how we'll create a screen in my case type, basically on the case designer, right? So see here, once you click on this assignment shape, okay, I'm sorry, not assignment shape, in the step, the first step, okay, whatever the step that you are seeing, this collect information step. So once you click on this, its corresponding property panel is displayed here. If you click on the process related property panel is displayed. If you click on the stage related property panel is displayed. So whatever the context it is, according to that context, the property panel is uploaded or refreshed. So if you click on this particular enter, this step, the first step, okay, enter start and end date, so its corresponding property panel is displayed. So what is the routing? This step has to route it to whom? The routing is current user. Okay, so I'll set some status. The status would be leave details is the name of the status. Okay, so instructions. So I'll come back to instructions. There is something called as configure view. What is the view here? View is nothing but a screen, basically. So if you wanted to configure your screen, you have to click on configure view. Click on this. So I'll add few fields. Basically, what fields I wanted to display in the screen. What fields I wanted to display? Leave start date, leave end date, and leave reason, right? So these are the things. So already I have created, if you remember, already I've created let me cancel this. Already I've created two fields, right? I'll add these fields in this particular view, configure view. So click on this configure view. If you wanted to add the existing fields of this particular case type, see here there is fields, right? So expand this fields, search for leave start date and leave end date. First it has to display leave start date, add this. Next one is leave end date. You can delete this. Okay, so do we have leave reason? Did we create that? No, we haven't created that, right? Now you can add that one. Leave reason. So leave reason is of type text paragraph. Okay, so leave start date and end date. So if you want, you can keep it as mandatory fields. Required. So just click on submit. Click on submit. So in the background, it has created properties, it has created section, it has created flow action, it has created the flow, and everything is set now. You need not to do anything now. You need not to create a section rule, flow action rule, any rule. Okay. So now till this logic, I will save it. I'm saving the case type. See, this is called as case type. Once you run the case type, we'll create the case. At this point, earlier we used to call the transaction as a work object, right? So now the work object terminology is changed now. The work object is nothing but case here. So the design time is called as case type. The runtime, the transaction is called as case. So now I'll create a case for this. How to create a case? Here, if you save and run option, right? Click on the save and run. So this is not the case, or this is not a work object. Basically, this is create harness. Okay. So once you click on done, now it will create the transaction. Now it has created the transaction. So earlier we used to call this as work object, right? This is called as work object ID. So this is the status, right? So now we are calling this as a case. Okay, so that's what I'm saying. The design time is called as case type. The runtime is called as case. So for a case type, you can create n number of cases, n number of work objects, n number of transactions. Okay, see here, concentrate on this portion. This is what we have designed, right? This is what the screen that we have designed. Leave start date, leave end date, and leave reason. Okay, so if you see the bottom, it will give you a very high level picture of the number of stages. So currently you are at apply leave. In the apply leave, you are in this particular process, enter start and end dates. So currently the pointer is at this particular, it is showing the arrow mark, right? So this is the process that you are in. Under this stage, you are under this particular process. So this is the screen that got created in the background. So now you can give the dates 20. So end date is 22. Not sick of traveling through my hometown. So you can give the reason and you can click on submit. Okay. So for this particular L19, so where the data is available on the clipboard, where is the data available? So it is available on the same. It is PY work page. Come down. So PY work page. Click on this PY work page. Leave end date, leave start date, leave reason. So PY ID, everything is same. Runtime. Okay. It is just that you have initiated the transaction via case type, not from the flow. Okay. Now let's go back to the leave application. So why nothing is displayed here? It came to manager approval. So it has completed this. It came to manager approval, but there is nothing in the manager approval stage. Simply, it says thank you for your input. Let's go back to leave application slide. Okay. Now let's learn something about the processes. Okay. So under the stage, so we have executed this case type, right? We have created a case, right? So as soon as the case is created, the first stage is invoked. This stage invoked this particular process, enter leave details process. In the enter leave details process, the first step is enter start and end date. So this is how it got triggered. Now under the stage, you can have a number of processes. You can have different types of process. It's not only one process you can have multiple number of processes. So basically you can from the stage you will have two types of processes. Okay, one is sequential process, other one is parallel process. Okay, there are two types of process, one is sequential and parallel. So what is sequential? So I'll add one more process. So add process, new process. So this is enter leave details. So enter leave reason. Assume that here start and end date we have captured here reason. Okay, assume that this is the process. So once the stage is invoked, okay, it will invoke the first process. After the first process is completed, it will go to the second process. So this type of process is called as sequential process. Okay, now I'll add one parallel process. Add parallel process. See here there is add parallel process. Click on this new process. So every parallel process is noted with this parallel symbol. So visually, to represent it visually for the user. So these two are sequential process. This is a parallel process. Now the question is, what is parallel process? When this parallel process will be invoked? By seeing this, can you tell? Can any one of you guys tell this when this parallel process will be invoked?
At the same time, the first process gets triggered. The parallel process will also get triggered.
Right.
Because they're not dependent on each other. Each can be worked independently. They're not dependent on each other.
Okay.
So both
So
will be triggered.
I wanted to understand when exactly this process will be triggered. As soon as enter leave details is invoked, or is there anything else? So basically, you should understand what is parallel processing definition in case design. So I'll give you the definition of parallel processing. Parallel processing is nothing but as soon as the stage is triggered, the parallel process will be invoked. If you wanted to invoke a process as soon as the stage is triggered. Okay. So once you run the case type, once you invoke apply leave stage, all the parallel process which are there under the stage will start its execution. So it will be invoked. Those processes will be invoked by the system. So that is definition of the parallel processing. By default, can I say the first process in a stage is a parallel process or not? It is parallel process, right? So as soon as the stage is invoked, this process, the first process which is added, that will be invoked. Okay. So enter leave details, the first process in the stage is always a parallel process. Now, if you wanted to add one more parallel process, so you can go to menu and you can add. So basically, parallel processing means, so as soon as the stage is invoked, so if you wanted to invoke any kind of process, that process should be a parallel process. Okay. So sequential means once these are completed, then only it will go for the second. So it is sequential, one after the other. Okay. So now, yes. So we'll delete this. Now we'll try to understand bit technical details. Just a minute. Yeah, sorry guys. So far we have understood in terms of the process or the stage. So very high level, right? We'll try to understand technically what these things are. Okay, so now click on this process. So I'll try to open this process. Basically, I wanted to understand what process exactly is all about. Okay, so click on this process, click on open process. Now guys, tell me what is this rule? In the background, what is the process?
A flow.
Okay. Others. What is this rule?
Flow rule.
There is a flow rule basically. So what you're trying to do is from the case type, so you have added a process. Process is nothing but it is a flow. You are trying to add a flow rule for a case type. So if you add 10 processes to your case type, it is nothing but you're adding 10 flow rules for that particular case type. Okay. So a process in case designer context is nothing but a flow rule in the background. Now we'll try to understand what is this step. What is this step?
The assignment step.
Yeah. So the step is assignment shape basically. So one thing I can tell is like, so one process is equal to one flow and one step is equal to one shape. So here it is assignment shape. So it can be other shapes also. It can be decision shape. It can be sub-process shape. Okay. So it can be another smart shapes and advanced shapes also. So process is a flow rule. Under flow rule, each step is nothing but a shape in that particular flow. Okay. Now let's try to understand another thing. See, process. Just a minute. So I wanted to understand what is the case type technically in the background. See, process means it's a flow rule. So step means it's a shape in the flow rule. So what is case type? Anyone? So I'll open any one of the rules. So see, if you wanted to create any rule, either it is property rule, flow action rule, section rule, any rule. So you have to create under something, right? What is that something?
Work class.
See, it need not to be a work class. In any class, you can create any rule, right? What is the case type? So can you see something here? So just wanted to understand in which class this flow rule got created.
Work class.
Wait, what class? See here, there is a class name, right?
CL.
So it created a new class under work for the application, for the application we created.
Okay. So this is the name of the class,
Leo
right?
application.
So this is the class in which the flow got created. So what is this? This is the class name. So this is the name of the class. Leave application is the name of the class. So it is followed with inheritance path. Okay. So now tell me what is case type in the background
Is a class.
is the class. Okay. So case type.
Nothing but a
is
module.
Sorry.
Case type is nothing but a module, sir.
What is module? No, it's not a module. There is no such thing called as module. So it is a class. Okay. So technically, you are creating a case type means you are actually creating a class in the background. So whatever the rules that you create as a part of this particular case type, right? So all the rules will be created under that class. Okay. So now let's try to understand this. Go to App Explorer. So leave application. So this is the class. So expand the data model, expand the property. So three properties got created under this class: leave start date, leave start date, end date, leave reason. Okay. So if you go to the process, if you go to the flow, enter leave details. parallel process, PO start case, enter leave details, enter leave. So all these are the flows that we have created, right? Okay, so we'll try to understand what this class is all about. So one thing that you should understand is creating a case type is nothing but creating a class in the background. So we'll try to understand what type of class is this, what are its inheritance, what is its inheritance structure and all those stuff. Okay, now guys, can you tell me, is it a concrete class or an abstract class?
It's a concrete class because it has a leaf symbol.
Sorry, it's a concrete class because
It has a leaf symbol besides it. So
if it has a leaf symbol, so is it work dash cover dash?
oh, it's a
Also
class
have,
symbol.
go to definition. It's an abstract class. So this leaf symbol doesn't indicate that it is an abstract or a component. It indicates it's a class. Okay. Can you guys tell me? It's very simple, right? You should tell me.
This is a
What
concrete
type of-
class.
It is a concrete class. Why?
Because it has been inherited from work class, and it has been also instantiated from the methods.
How it is? You have told two things. It has inherited from the work class. If it is inherited from the work class, means it should be a concrete. It should be a concrete class. Need not to this.
We can create instances of that class, like we are creating transactions. So it's a concrete class.
So we have created transactions, right? So transactions are nothing but the instances. One transaction is equal to one instance. So which class will have instances? Only concrete classes will have instances. So directly we can say that this class type is concrete class. Let's go to the definition. See, it is concrete. Now, if it is a concrete class, it should have a table, right? For storing all the instances, it should have a table in the database to store the instances. Now tell me guys, in which table it will store the instances?
Test connection.
Okay, but we'll click on that. But before clicking on that, so I wanted to understand. From this we can derive in which class it will store. See the class group. What's the class group of this particular class?
IBS, vehicle insurance work.
Not asking about the class group. What's the type of the class group? Is it a class group or belongs to a class group or does not belong to a class group? Depending upon the class group only, it will decide which table it will store, right?
Yeah.
It belongs to a class group.
It belongs to a class group. Means what? As per the definition of belongs to a class group, so to which table it will point to?
The work table. It will go into the IBSV vehicle insurance work.
So this is the class group. So the type of this particular class is belongs to a class group. So to which class group it belongs to? It belongs to the work class group. Okay. So if a class belongs to a class group, so the instances of this particular class will store in the table to which the class group is pointing to. So class group will have a dedicated table, right? So to that table, this class also will store its instances in that same table. Now tell me which table it will store the instances. It is the work table. Okay, so if you click on test connection, it would be the same. PC underscore IBS underscore VH ensure underscore work. So this is the table. We are calling it as work table. Okay. So all these things you should be in a position to tell. Right. Anyways, so we'll try to understand its inheritance tomorrow. Okay. Any questions before we wind up for the day? Everything is clear.
Yeah, in order to do any validation at the property level. So yeah, so can I do it here, or we
Yes,
really
you
need?
can do it. You can do it. See here for fields, for whatever the fields that you have, right? So see, basically you wanted to add validations on the screen, right? So you have to go to configure view. For this fields, you can add the validations on this. Okay. So when you start date is before 20, assume that. Okay. If it is before 20, I wanted to throw a validation message. Start date cannot be and history date. Okay, something like that. So now if you give a date before this, okay, so it will throw the validation. In this way you can add validations. There are different types of validations. Basically this is at the form level. This is called as form validation, and you can have validations at stage entry also. Stage entry. So go to the stage, go to validations. So stage set entry validations. So before it tries to reach this stage, if you wanted to throw validation, say for example, manager approval. So before it reaches, the control reaches to manager approval, if you wanted to make sure some validation is happening. Say for example, if the start date is let's take age. If age is greater than 80, then only you have to come to this stage. Assume that this is the validation. Then you can do that kind of validation also. So whatever the validation that you do here, basically it is a validate rule. OBJ validate. You have to configure the OBJ validate and you have to call that validate rule. So what will happen is, before it goes to this particular stage, so whatever the validation that you configure here, it will trigger. If there are no validation messages, there is no errors, then only it will go to this. If there are any validations, it will not go to this particular stage. It will throw a message saying that, so there are stage entry validations, so please correct them. Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I have another question regarding parallel steps.
Yeah. Process.
Sorry,
Steps
parallel process. Yeah. So parallel process. So the first process is always parallel.
Yes.
Right. And if suppose I have a fifth step, I have 1 to 4 steps are sequential, and fifth step is parallel. Okay. But say suppose my fifth step requires some data entry from the user. Okay, due to any reason. Okay. Then my first step will be executed in parallel to the fifth step. So is it?
Yeah.
Yeah, fifth process. Sorry. So does it mean that the two screens associated to both of that and their respective properties will be shown one after another?
No, no, no. See, okay, let me run and show this. This is parallel process. So this is sequential process. Okay. So parallel process, it doesn't have any screens. So enter leave details has this screen, right? So let's save this. Okay. So you have told an example at 5th step. I kept it at 3rd step. Okay. So what happens generally? Now tell me, guys. So if I run this, it will come to this stage. As soon as this stage is entered, how many processes will be invoked in this example?
2, 1 and 3.
2 processes. Sorry, 2 or 3?
2.
What are those?
Your number 1
Enter leave details
and your parallel process that apply leave number 4. Yeah,
this one. Basically, this process and this process will be invoked.
Correct.
As soon as this process is invoked, the step will be invoked. Okay.
Correct.
This parallel process is invoked, this step will be invoked. Okay. So we'll see how parallelly both are triggered. So click on save and run. So click on done. Okay. See here how many open assignments are there. So first of all, let's see which process has been invoked. Which process is shown on the URL. It is
the 4th one.
This one. With some logic, it will take some logic behind the screens. So either it will show you this or this. Okay. So now how many are active? How many open assignments are active? There are 2 open assignments. One is enter start and end date. This one is active and this one is active. Okay. So there are 2 processes. So the first one, this enter start date is coming from the first process. This is coming from the third process. Okay. So you wanted to see that? Click on this. Where am I? So what is parallel process underscore 1? This is the ID of the process. Okay. So see here, this is the one. This assignment is coming from there. And if you click on where am I? So this is coming from this. Enter leave details. So this is wrongly displaying, which is wrong. So the pointer has to be here. Okay. See here, enter leave details and it is showing this. So basically parallel process means it has invoked 2 processes at the same time. What is the time here? As soon as the stage is invoked. As soon as the stage is invoked, if there are 10 parallel processes, it will invoke 10 parallel processes.
Okay, thank you.
Now the question is, when will it go to the sequential process? Guys, tell me when will it go to the second sequential process?
When the first process is complete.
When the first process, why when the first process is completed? See, visually, though it is at the 3rd place, it doesn't mean that it has invoked 3rd time. You understand this? Visually, for seeing purpose, this is on the top, this is at the bottom. But runtime, do you think this is how it is? No, right? This and this are at the same level.
Yeah, so your first one and where your cursor is, both will run together. And the sequence will, yeah. So once the first one will complete, then only the sequence process should start, right?
No. Okay. Let's see. Let's run and see. See, what I'll do is, as you told me, right? Let's see this. So I'll complete this process. 20 and 21. Submit. It has invoked. Seems like it got invoked. If I leave, just a minute, guys. apply leaf 3. This is the third, this is the second sequential process, right?
Yes.
It is invoked. Okay. Without completing this, it is invoked. Okay. Let me try it in a different way. Save and run. Click on done. So now, instead of completing this, I'll complete this. Okay? I'll complete the parallel process. Apply leaf 4. Apply leaf 4. I'll go to this. Okay, this is apply leaf 4. Click on advanced discuss. Click on refresh. Enter leaf details. Yeah. So the behavior is the same as you told. The behavior is same. So though it is parallel process, so it is following this sequence. Once you complete this, it is going to this.
Okay.
But once you complete this, it is not going to this. And also, it doesn't mean that this is sequential. It doesn't mean both the things have to be completed. It is not like that.
Makes sense. Thank you.
So this is following the order. Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Yeah. Thank you guys. Thanks for joining. Bye.
Thank you, Karthik.